Josh Haston here, Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday night, the 11th of August, 2019, the 10th of Av, 5779. Just finished fasting maybe 2 hours ago or so as I record here from Gush Etzion, Israel. And, of course, the holiday of Tisha B'av, the 9th of the month of Av, the saddest day on the Jewish calendar. Technically, it's actually the 10th of Av. The fast was pushed off by one day because of Shabbat. And I'm going to get into all of the events which happened involving the Temple Mount here throughout the day. We'll get to that in a minute. But top story over the weekend, the two monsters, the Arab terrorists who murdered Dvir, Sorek, this past week, 19-year-old Hesder Yeshiva student, didn't even get a chance to don his IDF uniform, was murdered just down the road from where I am right now, here in Gush Etzion, as he was walking back to his yeshiva after purchasing books, gifts for his rabbis at the end of the year, stabbed to death by these monsters. Well, those responsible were caught in a 48-hour manhunt conducted by the IDF security forces. They descended upon a village in the Hebron area, which is just about 10 or 15 minutes down the road from Gush Etzion, and caught two terrorists, a 24-year-old and a 30-year-old Hamas activists, terrorists, monsters, who snuffed out yet another life, another Jewish life here in Israel, simply because the boy was Jewish. Thank God they were caught. Do I wish that they were killed? Absolutely. But I am hoping that they will be put away for life, never to see the light of day, never to be exchanged in any prisoner release or anything else that we've done in the past. These guys are the worst of the worst and should never see the day of light again. That is definitely the way I feel here, since they survived. They were caught without fighting back, so our forces did not kill them in the operation. They were taken into custody. I'm glad at least the very minimum, that these two monsters, Hamas monsters, are off the street. And I'll get into Hamas in just a few minutes here. But since this was the fast of the 9th of the month of Av, Tisha B'av, I want to talk about everything that happened today. So the Tatzpit news agency reports that originally this morning, the Israeli government and Jerusalem police initially banned Jews from visiting the Temple Mount during the morning day of Tisha B'av. Now, people were lined up this morning from about 6 a.m. Now, let's remember, this is a fast day, and it is boiling hot here in Israel. So you had people from 6 a.m. lining up, all ready to go to visit what this is all about. The Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, where two temples stood. We commemorate Tisha B'av because it was on the same day, years apart, that both temples were destroyed by our enemies, the Babylonians and the Romans. So as they were waiting there, the police announced they were shutting down the holy site to Jews, as Muslims were celebrating the holiday of Eid al-Adha, which is taking place this week for Muslims around the world. They fear that the throngs of Muslims would clash with the Jews. Muslim leaders, Tatzpit news agency, TPS for short, TPS says that Muslim leaders over the weekend called on Jerusalem's Muslims to attend prayers at the Temple Mount to ensure that Jews would not visit the site during Tisha B'av. They began their prayers an hour later than usual to ensure the Muslims would still be there at the site. Now, I also hear, it was also reported elsewhere today, that in fact all the other mosques in Jerusalem were actually shut down, closed, forcing everyone, all the Muslims, to come up to the Temple Mount in hopes for a confrontation with the Jews. So here you have Jews standing some up to 5 hours waiting to go up to the Temple Mount, not allowed to do so. Just before 11 a.m., police finally permitted a small group of Jews to enter the Temple Mount, only to ascend and enter 200 meters into the Jewish holy site with Arabs rioting in the background. After a few minutes, the place was shut down again after there were riots. At the end of the day, 1,700 at the end, again, so the Temple Mount shut down, reopened throughout the day. 1,729 Jews here, according to the article, visited the Temple Mount this Tisha B'av, actually more than last year. But it was not pleasant and not convenient. Hamas, of course, or somebody at least representing Hamas, hung up a banner on the Temple Mount from that terror gang, conveying their holiday greetings to the Muslim worshippers, a clear violation of Israel's sovereignty on the site, says the article. Member of Knesset Nir Barkat, the former mayor of Jerusalem, calling on the police to allow Jews to visit the site, not surrender to Muslim violence, and Minister Bezalel Smotrich, calling for an emergency cabinet meeting. Throughout this entire ordeal, again, the Muslims were rioting on the Temple Mount. There were reports of a Jewish teen walking through the old city who was attacked, a bottle thrown at him, cars being pelted with rocks in the area. This is all going on our saddest day of the year, commemorating the loss of our temples. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem calls today a victory. They released a statement in the afternoon saying, Tisha B'av victory after 5-hour standoff. Police opened Temple Mount to Jews. Hundreds of Jews fasting Tisha B'av, the anniversary of the destruction of the holy temples, waiting in the hot sun, some for as long as 5 hours, while Israel police contended with rioting Muslims on the Temple Mount, celebrating Eid al-Adha. At 10:45 a.m., police opened the Mughrabi Gate, allowed hundreds of Jews onto the Mount for a brief tour of the Temple Mount. Hundreds of police were present, preventing the Muslims from attacking the Jews. Imagine if the police were not up there on the Temple Mount. Imagine what would happen. And then another mob as they were leaving the Temple Mount, says the Temple Institute. And finally, they say, we thank the Israel police under the direction of Police Minister Gilad Erdan, who prevailed against the Muslim rioters and ensured that Jews would be able to visit the place of the Holy Temple on the day we mourn its destruction and prepare ourselves for its rebuilding. So the Temple Institute sees this as a victory, even though they had to wait for 5 hours to go up. Minister Bezalel Smotrich wanted an emergency meeting. I mean, when I woke up this morning, came back from morning prayers, I saw the Temple Mount was shut down, and it was a decision by the Prime Minister. However, the Temple Mount later opened, and the Prime Minister released a statement saying, on Thursday, after consulting with all security officials, I made a decision. This year, like every year, Jews can ascend the Temple Mount on the 9th of Av, even when it's a Muslim holiday. The question was not whether Jews would ascend, but rather how to best manage the public safety. This is what we did. And then he criticizes Smotrich and others, including Ayelet Shaked, who commented on the situation on Twitter. He said, the Prime Minister did, I'm not impressed by the recommendations of cabinet ministers on Twitter. Leadership requires responsibility and determination. This is how we operated and how we will continue to operate. So the Prime Minister taking the credit, saying that all along he was going to let Jews go up to the Temple Mount. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of how or when they would be allowed to go up. So here we have, unfortunately, we have politics coming into play when it comes to access for Jews to go up to the Temple Mount. And by the way, if you are not aware, Jews are not allowed to openly pray on the Temple Mount. You can be arrested if you do so. Even though technically Jews, under a ruling by the Supreme Court, are allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, but the police step in if they deem it dangerous, which is, I guess, every single time. And Jews are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount while Muslims pray freely. That is our reality. That is the situation. And perhaps, again, I'm not a prophet, perhaps that is the reason the Mashiach, the Messiah, did not arrive today. They say that the Mashiach's arrival, or at least the birth of the Mashiach, will take place on Tisha B'av. Unfortunately, it did not happen this year. But who knows? Maybe he'll come during the year. I don't know. But that is what our sages teach us, that he will come on Tisha B'av, and I also learned something fascinating today. I learned that it is a Sephardic custom for people to clean their houses, even though they're fasting and they're hungry and thirsty, in the afternoon on Tisha B'av, in anticipation of the Mashiach's arrival, so that they are ready, their houses are ready to host the Mashiach. It's an unbelievable tradition. I just learned about it this year. So please God, while it didn't happen on Tisha B'av, hopefully the Messiah, the Mashiach, will come on a different day here in the near future. We started by mentioning the horrible terror attack. May God avenge the blood of Dvir Sorek. At the same time, the IDF foiled another major attack along the Gaza border. 4 Hamas Arabs with RPGs, assault rifles, grenades were killed near the fence with Israel. 1 managed to come into Israel and begin to attack the IDF soldiers, and thank God no IDF soldiers were hurt. No casualties amongst our troops, according to the Jerusalem Post. It was a pre-dawn terror attack on Saturday morning, which was thwarted. And I know that there was a brave IDF female soldier who was the one who spotted. She was one who spotted these terrorists coming into Israel. Now, get this, okay? I mean, that's great news. Thank God nobody was hurt, and this attack was foiled. And of course, the goal of Hamas is to infiltrate into Israel and to make their way to the nearest Jewish community and murder Jews. That is their goal, even while insane groups like If Not Now and others say that these are peaceful protests and Israel's the aggressor here. These aren't protests. These are attempted infiltrations. They had RPGs. How are you going to call that a peaceful protest on a border? They had RPGs and assault rifles. We know their intention. But listen to this. According to reports in Gaza, this is Hamas's alibi here. 3 of the 4, they call them Palestinians, killed were members of what is known as the Hamas unit responsible for preventing Gazans from approaching the border fence. So in other words, they say there was one Hamas terrorist. Well, they don't call him a terrorist. There was one Hamas member who was approaching the border. The other 3 were on their way to stop him. And that's when the IDF, in their view, killed or murdered 3 innocent Arabs from Gaza. Even though they were found, all 4 of them were found to be in the possession of assault rifles, RPGs, hand grenades, and whatnot. So this is how Hamas spins it. No, we were on our way to stop an attack when Israel, the aggressor in their minds, carried out this attack. All right, now keep that in mind. That is their first version of the story. 3 were sent to prevent the 1 from going over into Israel. Are you with me? Because later on, a Hamas spokesman here, also reported by the J-Post, added that Hamas had nothing to do with the attempted infiltration. Wait a minute, you just said 3 of the people affiliated with this potential attack, they don't call it that, were Hamas members trying to stop the 4th. And now Hamas says that they had nothing to do with the attack at all, that none of the 4 were members of Hamas. So which one is it? Make up your mind, Hamas. Okay? Don't shoot yourself in the foot here. The Hamas spokesman added that the crime was committed, Israel's crime, against a group of young people who are angry because of the occupation, blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, they say that they were not Hamas members. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that 3 out of 4 were Hamas members trying to stop the 4th, and then turn around and say, just minutes later, that none of them were members of Hamas, and this was an independent attempt to infiltrate into Israel. These are liars. These are monsters. These are terrorists. And what bothers me sometimes is that people forget that while Hamas controls Gaza, they are also trying to carry out attacks in Judea and Samaria, Jerusalem, and in other places as well. And the first example is those who murdered Dvir Sorek this week. And secondly, the IDF, I believe we talked about it on last week's show, We said that Hamas was in the midst of planning a major attack for Jerusalem. And people I don't know how, seem to have forgotten who Hamas is, forgotten that they carried out dozens of suicide bombings and attacks in the 90s and the 2000s throughout Israel. Yet somehow we rationalize that we can reach ceasefires with these people. I must have mentioned this last week because it is mind-boggling how there is somehow this short-term or long-term, rather, memory loss. It could be both, into who Hamas is, what they're all about, caught right here in a lie. All you have to do is read 2 separate articles in the paper of what Hamas is saying. Lying, lying, lying. Their goal is to infiltrate into Israel. Their goal is to murder Jews. Their goal is to fire rockets using their own people as human shields. And there has been a break in rockets for a while. Let's see how long that lasts. But per their charter, and don't forget, the PLO has a similar charter, okay? Hamas is trying to murder as many Jews as possible, period. And let's not fall for their doublespeak and their flat-out lies that you can simply find by reading the Jerusalem Post and reading back-to-back articles on how they manipulate and make up stories to try to hide the fact that their goal remains to throw every last Jew here in Israel into the sea. And if that isn't enough, this morning, IDF forces encountered and killed another armed Hamas terrorist on the border with the Gaza Strip, as it says here in Tatzpit. The terrorist approached the fence, fired at troops, who responded with fire and killed him. IDF tanks also fired at a Hamas target in Gaza. That was this morning after everything else that went on. In other news, JNS reports that 41 Republicans and 31 Democrats from the U.S. Congress are in Israel on overlapping party tours to get a first-hand view of the complex security challenges Israel faces and to express their unconditional bipartisan support for the Jewish state. No, the squad is not here, although some of them may be showing up here in the near future. We'll have to see. The delegations in Israel, both Republicans, Democrats, touring Israel's borders, gaining insights into Israeli advances in defense, agriculture, water desalination, conservation, commercial technology, meeting with the Prime Minister and other officials. So let's welcome them with open arms. Both Republicans and Democrats who are here to show their support. I definitely could do without the fact that at least the Democrats, from what I understand, I don't know about the Republicans, have already met with Mahmoud Abbas, because that is a complete waste of time. Just another terrorist in a suit who continues the pay for slay program. So I don't know why they're meeting with Mahmoud Abbas. Just a complete waste. I would suggest visiting places like Gush Etzion and Hebron before wasting your time in meeting with Mahmoud Abbas. Nevertheless, it's nice to see the support from, these are all freshmen, by the way. I think other than the leaders of the group, everyone else on this trip, these are freshmen here on it's an APAC affiliated trip sponsored by the the American Israeli Education Foundation. And other news here reported in several places. This is the J-Post, an accused, this is back in the U.S., neo-Nazi sympathizer employed as a Las Vegas security guard, arrested, charged with possession of bomb-making materials. Apparently this guy was planning on attacking a synagogue and perhaps several other targets, but thank God he was caught before he had the opportunity to attack a synagogue in the U.S. I'm telling you, in Israel, terrible things happen. We have terror attacks or whatnot, but we are on call. We are on alert 24/7. And after seeing what's going on over there, especially in places like the U.S., I mean, Europe, of course, but what's going on over there in the U.S., I encourage anyone listening to this broadcast to be on alert at all times. And if you are in charge of a Jewish institution, there better be some type of protocol in regard to security, whether it's a synagogue, school, JCC, or whatnot. In this day and age, with all this craziness going on, whether they're extreme leftists or Islamists or white nationalists or any of these people, you need to be prepared. I think I said it on one of my shows maybe 10 years ago. I predicted that there would be a time where to walk into a mall or a movie theater in the U.S., just like we do here in Israel, you will have to go through security. And it looks like I was right. Unfortunately, I was right, as we're getting closer and closer to that stage where every public venue, mall, movies, bowling alley, whatever it is in the U.S., will have to be protected. Certainly a synagogue or places of worship or schools will have to be protected by an armed guard who knows how to use the weapon, who knows what he's doing, and who is on alert to protect the lives of people just trying to go out and get some culture. But unfortunately, that is the reality. And thank God in this situation, this potential attack on a synagogue was thwarted. Let's finish the show on something positive here. As I'm telling you, I'm getting tired. I mean, I did fast all day. I broke the fast a little while ago. But I am getting tired. I usually don't get worn out by the end of a 20, 30-minute show here on the Land of Israel Network. But it does happen to the best of us after a fast especially. But this was amazing. This was the picture of the week. Auschwitz survivor celebrates her 104th birthday with more than 400 descendants at the Kotel, the Western Wall. Go check this out online. This is an unbelievable thing. This was a woman whose family was murdered by the Nazis in Auschwitz. Her mother was taken away by Mengele, Joseph Mengele, as he is known as the angel of death, the monster who conducted medical experiments on Jews at Auschwitz. This is the answer right here. She's 104. She has 400 descendants from her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and apparently about 40 weren't even in attendance for this picture. And you got to check out the picture at the Western Wall if you haven't seen it. Go online. Her name is Shoshana Ovitz, and that was her birthday wish, that all her family would be together at the Jewish holy site in Jerusalem, the Western Wall. 104 years old. May she live to 120. But this is the answer to everything that happened to us at the hands of the Nazis. 6 million dead. But those who survived, this is the answer. All of her descendants taking a picture in Jerusalem, the holiest city in all of Judaism. That's the answer. That's going to do it for today. My name is Josh Haston. This has been Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com here just after the fast of Tisha B'av, the 10th of Av 5779. Don't forget to get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Haston, or my page, Josh Haston Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Haston, and on Instagram as well. Big shout out to Binyamin Bresky, engineer extraordinaire, and Tabitha Epstein for all the work she does behind the scenes here at the Land of Israel Network to make sure these shows get up and get out to you, dear listener. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next week, please God, next Monday, everyone out there in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Have a great week. Shavua Tov from Gush Etzion, just south of Jerusalem.
Jonathan Pollard served in an American prison for 30 years. In 2015, he got out of jail. But is he really free? Listen to Inside Israel Today to find out what is going on with Jonathan Pollard right now and his quest to come to Israel and to take care of his wife Esther, who is currently very, very sick.
That's Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman, the Jerusalem Post's chief political correspondent, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.